secret about the meeting we had with Boris Johnson yesterday. But please do not let the media know. He introduced himself more or less, and then he went on to say, it's amazing that Guyana produces all these people who are super intelligent and high achieving. He mentioned Trevor Phillips, and I think he mentioned Baroness Amos, and then he got stuck. And then I said to him, and Gina Miller, and he went, yeah. He went as red as a cherry. Anyway, folks, this is an opportunity for you to ask questions to the President and to the Vice President. Please. I mean, ask questions or make statements.
Your Excellency, and indeed I begin my very brief address or comments by offering an apology for arriving and you ending your address really. Some may say that's probably the best part of it, but I wouldn't. I was particularly keen to hear about the wonderful flora and fauna which Guyana produces. My interest, though, as a musician, as a first black person to study music at Oxford University. And I'm particularly keen to see that throughout the Caribbean, and of course Guyana, and Africa, where I spent some time as director of music for Kwame Nkrumah in my salad days, I'm very keen to see, before I leave this earth and depart from the spirit world, to see that our music, Caribbean and African music, should really be recognized in the highest degree by everybody throughout the world. I mean, there is some evidence that Bob Marley made a mark and one or two more, but the whole thing is still rather sort of hit or miss. Is there some way in which you can, Excellency, in your high position of head of state of this unique land, advance music and the arts so that they will become major points of currency for a needful country? I think, often I see records being sold by various people like Elton John and other non-entities. I am so shattered and annoyed and beside myself. So may I appeal very, 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 very strongly to get to really advance music and the arts from our own beloved Guyana. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, my name is Dina Bland. I'm Miss Guyana UK for 2015 and Miss Guyana Universe, the third runner-up of 2015. You mentioned about the educational system. My question to you is, don't you also think that we need better teachers in our schools in Guyana? I am a student of President's College, Stella Maris also. Thank you. And whenever I go to Guyana, I can see that the institution has depleted massively. And it breaks my heart every time to see the condition of my school, my home that I lived in for several years. So that's my question to you. Don't we need better teachers? Also, we have many Guyanese people that are studying here in London. Can we not bring them over to Guyana? I have another point also. You mentioned about businesses and entrepreneurship. How do we as British Guyanese students, entrepreneurs, how do we connect with Guyana? Because it was pitched before at the High Commission in 2012 that young people can get on board. I followed it up and nothing has happened. So I would like for this to be pushed, not to be just said, but to be executed. Thank you.
One more question, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. H.C. I must say how happy I am to realize that my dream has come true. 3 years ago, I met the president of Guyana in America, and I said to him, "You always coming to America. When will you come to London?" I'm happy that today I have seen, I'm still alive, that he has visited Guyana.
May we have your name, please? May we have your name, please?
Augusta Henry.
Thank you very much for those questions. The Foreign Minister will share those questions, the answers with me. In terms of education, I brought it up in my own remarks. We realize that there is a very serious problem of delivery of education, and it starts in part with the Sierra College of Education itself. And I would agree with you that we're looking first at the training that we give to teachers. In fact, the previous administration started the program for 1 laptop per family, but as soon as I got in, I changed it to 1 laptop per teacher, because I believe that the teachers need to master information technology first before we give it to families. And the government of China was very supportive, and that program has started. I also established a Ministry of Public Telecommunications for the first time, and that is promoting information technology in our schools. So I agree with you that work is being done or should be done at the Sierra College of Education. And as far as the role of the High Commission here in London is concerned, the Minister of Foreign Affairs will speak about that. We started off on a high. We set up some multilateral schools. Guyana always enjoyed a very high reputation for education throughout the Caribbean. And we need to recapture that, not just the reputation, but we need to start putting children at all levels, primary, secondary, and university level, back through the form of education which is suited to the times and which could ensure them not only good careers, but will ensure that they contribute to the development of the country. I myself have embraced the idea of STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and we hope that in succeeding years there will be greater emphasis on that, not discrediting what has been said by Mr. Halls, Dr. Halls, Professor Halls, but we need also to walk on 2 feet. One, we need the science if we're going to develop the country, but we also need the culture. The visit to UK, as the High Commissioner mentioned, I was here 51 years ago. In Hampshire, at Aldershot, where I received my officer cadet training. I came back at School of Infantry. But I have not been coming very frequently. And I hope to remedy that deficiency now that I'm president. The diaspora all over, not only in North America, but here in, I nearly said Europe, but here in Britain and Europe will receive my attention. So I will endeavor to come more frequently. So thank you very much for that reminder. And remember your remark. As far as the culture is concerned, you're quite right. Guyana and the entire Caribbean is very rich. For some years, we ignored the rich cultural heritage we had. We used to be admired by the rest of the Anglophone Caribbean because of our patriotic songs, our national songs. Foreign Minister and I were in Grand Bahama, in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, a few weeks ago. And one primary school, 20 Guyanese teachers. One primary school in Grand Baham had 20 primary school teachers alone. And when we got there, one of them wrapped herself in the golden arrowhead, and they insisted in coming out to sing the national anthem. It's not just national pride, but it's a beautiful national anthem, and we've got so many other patriotic songs that give you goosebumps when you hear it. So I agree with you. We need, a lot of those songs were written in the immediate post-independence period. Some of them in the colonial period, you know, My Guyana, El Dorado, and all those songs that we remember. And we've recently established something called the State Symphony Steel Orchestra, so that we can put more steel band playing into our primary and secondary schools. And of course, to remember those songs, and I myself have sponsored a few CDs where artists could repeat or sing the songs of their childhood, you know, all the game songs that we used to play. When you compare it with some of the other territories, they don't have such a rich repertoire of folk and national songs.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And can I add to your comments by way of thanking the members of the audience for having joined us this evening and showing great patience in waiting whilst we made our way through the traffic of London. I would like to start, if I may, by saying a few words as regards the question raised by the young lady who made reference to Ms. Bland, who was making reference to the need to address issues pertaining to education, and who seems to have been a product of President's College. I must say that it seems that there's a plan for the products of President's College to take over our institutions. Yesterday we were invited to dinner, and at the dinner, I think the only young ladies at the event were bold enough to boast that they were products of President's College, and also made the same complaint that you were making, that the quality of the place seems to decline. And this is really not a very good testimony to the governance of the educational system, and I assure you we agree. We agree with you in that regard. The President and I, even for a short time after that, were chatting about the need, and prior to that had a discussion on the need to address the problem of the President's College itself and the unique features that it has. But in general, of course, as he was indicating, maybe I should stand up, as he was indicating, there is a problem, we are encountering a problem as regards the quality of education, and therefore the urgent need to ensure that that is enhanced as quickly as possible. It is not possible for us to survive effectively in this world, which is characterized by change at all stages, the need to come to grips with the changes in science and technology if we don't address the educational system in all its dimensions. And this is one of the highest priorities of the government. So rest assured that we will pay attention to that dimension. The second point you raised is how best might the skills available and the persons, whatever level of skill they have, who are resident in the UK and elsewhere, liaise or relate to Guyana. Now, in 2012, I'm sorry that you had attempted to build a link with Guyana and was unable to do that. We had, when we came to office, found that the previous government had been working with the International Organization on Migration on a project. We have completed that project. They've made a report which has the intention of trying to identify what other countries do to capitalize and utilize their diaspora. And they have made a report which is being examined by the ministers at the moment, so that the work of the ministries and the other agencies of government can be properly integrated. There is, at this point in time, a website, for example. On that website, you can indicate what skills you have, what interests you might have, and they, in turn, I can't guarantee you that they will find you opportunities, but that information will be disseminated internally so that a two-way communication can take place. In the course of when we were looking at the 50th anniversary celebrations, we had made a suggestion, and this is tying the two sets of questions together, that one of the things we could do is to extend an arrangement which you'll find exists in the medical profession. There are many doctors, especially in the United States and Canada, who offer their services at different times of the year when they're free. So you'll find teams of doctors go to Georgetown either to lend support to the hospitals directly in Georgetown, for example, or to work in the hospitals that are outside of Georgetown. And that is the use of a skill that could be extended. Music, for example, I know that you made some remarks about the absence of visibility. I hope it's only the visibility you speak about, Professor Hall, because whilst there may not be many other musicians working on the keyboard and composing in the areas in which you have a special interest, Guyana has in fact produced a significant number of musicians in the pop sector, including, for example, composers and arrangers, including those who would have written for a number of the top artists, especially female artists, it seems. But we have ourselves produced over the years some who have risen. I can give you a list of the names of these. But what I'm saying to you, one of the challenges we have and one of the things we could do is to try to invite them, provide them with an opportunity to visit from time to time where they can work with local talent with a view to enhancing that talent, both in the area of commerce, which I think would make the president happy, but in their technical areas, so that their skills can be enhanced. And this is something I think would be very valuable, and we will try and encourage the relevant authorities, Ministry of Education and Culture in particular, to take that process forward. And so the other dimension of that has to do with information. You know, some of the before your time, there were some of the most prominent musicians in this country were Guyanese. Cy Grant, for example, is a Guyanese by birth, Eddie Grant, and you also have Rudolph Dunbar, who wrote one of the most important, who was one of the a very important musician here for two reasons. One is that he wrote a book on the technique of clarinet playing, and it was used for decades in the United Kingdom, in universities, in schools of music and elsewhere. And he was a performer in his own right. He was, of course, a conductor, conducted the Royal Philharmonic as well as the BBC Orchestra. So our failure is perhaps in making the information, embracing our people, making the information available. And I'll admit to that and say that we will try and deal with that as far as we can. Let me just make, if there is any other question that I've missed. No, for the moment I leave that. We'll perhaps get an opportunity to come back to those later. Thank you.
We're going to take 3 more questions now. Can you let us know your names, please?
Trotman, trained as a teacher in British Guyana. 10 years of teacher training in the Government Training College under RCG Potter and under Francis Von Coe. And then, as senior lecturer in English, I was given the job of being the research fellow in language for the University of Guyana, 1971. And I did the research into language because we were concerned with how our children were acquiring the standard English. I listened to the president today, and he said when he heard the songs, he got goose flesh. My grandmother would say, it made my skin grow. And so we have come to the stage where I think we have become, even over the years, bilingual. And what worries me is that we have to learn, we have to get to the point where we have to teach our language in another way. And when I finished the research, my thesis, which is in the University of Guyana's library, it said that our children, were in a quasi-foreign language situation. Because you're hearing our Creolese, which is valid for me. You know, I can't get angry unless I talk Creolese. That's my first language. But we also need to acquire the formal official language if we're going to do business abroad. And therefore, I think we have got to the stage where we need to use foreign language teaching methods. Even now, I mean, this was 76, this is 2017, and even more now, I think, we need it in our teaching of English, where we're training our teachers to train our teachers in the teaching of language as a foreign, English as a foreign language. We say that our Creolese is valid. It took me ages. I remember one weekend, myself and Ben Tyndall were trying to convince the headmasters that this is the children's first language. They have to have it. We have to teach something else. Or they dismiss us as two people who didn't know what we were talking about. But this is the situation we're in. You can say we got goose flesh. You can also say your skin grows. You can also say you talk out of turn or you fly your mouth. This is what the child wrote in his lesson. He answered the question that the man talked out the things and quiet things, fly his mouth. I couldn't penalize him for that. That was his language. So please, I'm asking that the thesis that for which the government paid to have done be taken out of the university library, and those concerned read it, because your money was paid for it. You might as well find out what the money was for, and begin to look seriously at our children acquiring the standard in parallel with their Creolese. Thank you.
Approaching other issues, longer standing issues in Guyana. For example, mental health. In 2012 alone, Guyana was ranked the highest country of suicide rates in the whole world. And that is definitely an issue that has been going around in Guyana for a very long time. There are many other issues such as women's equality and rights, domestic violence, and I was wondering, with the newfound revenue potentially from the oil, how you go about putting in place action for these concerns.
Sorry, good evening, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, and Commissioner. My name is Mr. Derek Damji. I'm Guyanese by birth. I've lived in Canada, in the Czech Republic, and now in the UK. And I'm happy to be in your company tonight. I've got two questions. I'll keep it quite brief. The first question is with regards to the oil find and your discussions and views on the green state. The question specifically then is, how do you reconcile the two? The second question, I'll pose it directly, is who would I contact specifically in your government if I want to contribute to the IT development of Guyana? And subsequent to that, what incentives have you got in place to support that initiative? Thank you.
We get them in batches of 3. So if I can start, and again the Foreign Minister will assist me. First of all, the language, I don't disagree with the comment made by Ms. Strotman, but it has to be taken further. We have 9 indigenous tribes, and each speaks a different language. When I was campaigning, particularly when I went down south in the Makushi, Wapishan areas, I had to take an interpreter, because although most Guyanese understand English, if you want to make people laugh, you speak to them in their own language. And it is more effective because when you're dealing with doctors, when you're dealing with schools, you need to be able, I agree with you entirely, you need to be able to communicate with persons in the language that they understand best, that they grew up with, that they speak at home. So and the other thing is, of course, there's no one Creole or Creolese. If you go on the sugar plantations, you may find differences. I remember, well, many of you from the rural areas would know that people speak about, oh, so-and-so is just living, 4 rods from here. So I asked the Dutchman, what is a rod? A rod, he doesn't know a rod. It's an obsolete measurement. It's about 12 feet 4 inches. Nobody in the world uses it anymore because they use meters. So we're shipwrecked with an old system there, but we still use rods and pawls and stelling. I asked the Dutchman, what's the stelling? He says, stelling? What's the stelling? So depending on depending on the area from which you come, you may find that you couldn't be understood. If you go into the market and you ask for Baigan, Karaila, some people don't even know how to spell Karaila. But when you ask for some things in some sugar estate areas, you'll be understood. If you use the same language in Lete Mohammadia, they won't understand what you're saying. So we don't even have a standard Creolese. And as you go from region to region, you may find some variation. Many of us would know what's a Corial or a Warashi, or what Kazrip is, But there are other expressions too, and I think Professor Alsop has done a lot of work. And if you try to explain to an Englishman what subteeth means, kotai, subteeth, or what's that? I can really tell me, I come in just now. So, there are variations, but there may be a body of words, a body of language, which is generally understood throughout the country, and I think this is something that should be explored further, but we'll try to retrieve your thesis. Now, the question of suicide, of women's equality, of domestic violence, mental health, this is a much more difficult and more challenging prospect for the government. Fellow Guyanese, we went through an extremely traumatic period. I call it the Troubles between 2002 roughly to 2008. We don't have to go into the causes, but many people died. There were many massacres, and nobody knows for sure how many people died, how many disappearances there were. Some people say 300, some people say 400, but there's no concrete evidence. But what has happened is that many of the children who were 2 and 3 and 4 years old in 2000 have now become young adults. And some of them never learned to solve problems without a gun. They never learned to solve problems in a more cordial or consensual manner. And there's an easier resort to violence. And there is a problem with interpersonal violence, and many of the crimes are interpersonal in nature. I don't disagree. The cause of suicide, again, I don't know if this is what I call a secondary impact from the violence, that people felt that life was worthless. Again, I don't want to pontificate on something, and this is not my field. And some persons might have attempted suicide and they feel that my comments are not sensitive. But there are many situations which are very difficult to comprehend. When you go to the home of a person who's committed suicide, it's comfortable. Mommy is there, daddy is there, there's enough to eat, they have a job. But she would take a car, hire a car from East Kanji, go to the Eugene Correa Airport at Ogle, buy a ticket, go to Kaichur, and take a running jump. That's not mental illness. That's not irrationality. She wanted to die in a spectacular way. I don't have the answers. I'm not laughing at her. I'm not using this as an example. But all I'm saying is suicide is difficult to understand because every suicidal person may have a completely different motive. And it has caused us concern. We are making studies from an academic point of view, from a medical point of view. But sometimes the people are not suffering from any known mental disease. They may have lost a loved one. Mommy doesn't want the girl to marry the boy. Two of them have some suicide pact. We don't know all of the reasons. Unfortunately, quite recently we lost Dr. Frank Beckles, who had sponsored a study on suicide. Yes, he died. But it requires a lot more study, and we don't have to jump to conclusions. It is not a response of the people who are poor or disadvantaged. We just don't know. And obviously, it's not a matter of embarrassment. The problem has to be confronted and solved. As far as the domestic violence is concerned, as I said, I do believe that some young people lost the art of conciliation. They lost the art of solving problems. And there is too easy resort to violence. And some of the situations are incredible to the point of being ludicrous. You know, two men traveling in a minibus across the Demerara Harbor Bridge. The rain is beating in. Somebody says, please close the windows. I'm closing the window. He's stabbed to death. I mean, it's not frequent, but you say, why should a man just spend the rest of his life in prison because he can't close the window? Sometimes you see two people go to a wedding house, and Mr. Trotman don't know whether it's a wedding house or a dead house. They drink too much, they start quarreling, but whether can I score more than light, and one dead. You know, there's no profound reason, there's no ideological conflict or anything. So it is a field that we need more study, and there is a lot of violence against women, I agree. Gender equality, last year we celebrated the 40th anniversary of the introduction of the Equality Bill in the state paper in the National Assembly. And I'm proud to say that on the 1st of January this year, I appointed the first 3 women senior counsel in the history of Guyana. Thank you for your applause. I do not see why our country had to wait 50 years for the first women senior counsel. I appointed 3, and as long as women they meet the criteria, I will freely appoint. Last year, for the national awards, of the persons who received the Golden Arrow of Achievement, exactly 50% were women. That's what equality means. So we have to make equality work in deed as well as in word, and this is a work in progress. So thank you for for raising these issues of a social nature. I have established what is called a Ministry of Social Cohesion. Some people were laughing, but for a country like ours, with different ethnicities, different religious groups, I am very, very careful. I'm very happy that we don't have religious riots. You can go into a village and see a mandir next to a masjid, next to a church, and people don't come out with knives, you know, trying to kill each other. We need social cohesion. There's a Minister of Social Cohesion, and he's working to ensure that what we've been speaking about, what's in our national slogan, national logo, one people, one nation, one destiny, would become a reality, that people actually see national unity. I lead a coalition of 6 parties. 6 parties. And every one of those partners is represented in the National Assembly and at the cabinet level, as some junior ministers, some senior ministers. And I believe it's a good thing for Guyanese to look to the government and see that there is representation there in the government. I have 2 Indian vice presidents, 1 African vice president here, 1 Amerindian vice president. So people will realize that things are changing, and social cohesion is meant to push that process further. So I don't disregard the comments made about culture and made about these social changes, which could, in the fullness of time, remove the scourge of suicide and of gender violence and of course, mental health problems. We're not there yet, but it's a work in progress. But I do believe that the secondary impact for children 3, 4, 5 to see the sort of violence that we had during the first decade of this new millennium, those memories are difficult to erase, and I think they feel that, oh, when I have a problem, this is the way to solve it. It's not true, but we have to work to reverse that trend. The third question, if I could briefly refer to that, we have to walk on 2 legs. There's no contradiction. Fortunately, or unfortunately, well, the petroleum that has been discovered is all offshore, and it does not immediately interfere with our environment. Many of the other extractive industries, gold, diamonds, timber, are onshore, of course, and we have to use measures to ensure that people do not destroy our rivers, which of course the indigenous people need because they draw their waters mainly from the rivers, and the land degradation is kept to a complete minimum or completely eliminated. We are in agreement. Last year I committed 2 million hectares to conservation. So we are preserving. The Green State means conservation. The habitats of our animals are the forests. And all these animals I called out, and there are more. You all have to stop me just now, but I could call out some more. Antita, armadillo, capybara, turtle, tapir, ant, spider. But don't let me go on. The point I'm making, the Amerindians have a saying, you know, trees hold up the sky. If you cut down the trees, the sky will fall. In reality, this means that the trees and the jungle, the forests, are the habitats of these animals. And if you destroy the habitats, the animals will vanish. So we are committed to preserving those habitats, preserving the environment. But when the oil comes, we will put measures in place, and that's one of the reasons why we're in Britain, to look for legislative and other measures to make sure that the forthcoming oil and gas industry would be done in a lawful and orderly manner. So I don't see a conflict between the two. It will not distract us or divert us from the course that we've chosen to make Guyana a green state. ICT, again, at the beginning of last year, for the first time, we created a Ministry of Public Telecommunication, which is the vehicle. It's under Minister Catherine Hughes, a member of our coalition, and that is the vehicle that is pushing IT, and I'm very glad I did it, and she's very glad she's Minister of Public Telecommunications also.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think the audience wouldn't be aware, but I tend to be a contrary person. So let me start off by responding to the question of Creole and its teaching, and to say to Ms. Trotman that whilst I have no doubt about the quality of your thesis, you will know, of course, that this has long been and continues to be an area of some contention. And I agree with the President when he reminds you that there are many Creoles, and again, he's going to accuse me of being difficult. Berbice, in the days when we spoke Creole, when we spoke Dutch, had its own Creole. It's a separate and different Creole. So there's a dispute in terms of academia as how best to teach languages where there exist these, if you like, deviations. However, one recognizes the problem. It's not one for us to, I think, say to you that you're right or wrong. I'm just saying to you that this is an area of some contention amongst those responsible for for educational policy. Just very quickly, if I might add to the President's comments about IT, the question was asked as to how might and who might someone with an IT capacity contact. The Ministry of Communications, of course, is the main one that is harboring those who manage communication skills and IT skills, but any one of the ministries you can go to has the need for IT experts, including the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So you can make contact with any of them. You can do it either directly or through the High Commission here. And I would add that you asked about incentives. The incentives to any set of persons intending to return to Guyana are the incentives associated with what is called the Remigrant Scheme. So this is a scheme by which if you are interested in returning to Guyana, you are required to stay there more than half a year. You have to have been abroad for more than 5 years. And that mechanism allows you to import on your return duty-free items, in particular, when I say duty-free items, transport vehicles such as a motor car per person, duty-free, free of duties and fiscal imposts. And I think many people find that valuable. That is the main incentive. And if you have personal possessions, normally any duties that might accrue would also be waived. Just a quick word, and I'm very pleased. I know the President has answered this. I'm not going to say very much more on this, but I'm very impressed that you should, as a young lady, take an interest in this area. First of all, let me say to you, on the question of violence and violence against women is a scourge that is affecting the entire Caribbean. It is not a peculiarity to Guyana. Domestic violence in general seems to be one of those things, such as what you see, a reflection perhaps of both education and of frustration, and especially amongst young men. This I'm afraid, and that one is shared also with Europe. So there are problems here. I don't know that we have an answer to that. What I would say to you, without venturing into the area of causes, which the President was expanding on, is that what we clearly have to do is to bring in the skills, advisory skills, mental health professionals in schools, in communities, in workplaces, and elsewhere, also training the policemen and social services so that they can recognize the signs, they can advise young people, and especially the biggest culprits here are young women, in the sense that they will tolerate levels of violence. Nobody gets badly beaten or beaten to death the very first time they get beaten up. In other words, it is something that's been usually going on a long time. And so support and advice is what is important, and we have to try and ensure that those things are in place. But that is not a peculiar problem to Guyana. It is across the region, and it has to do with the infrastructural support, and we have to try and direct resources to it. Even in medicine, you will find that amongst the Guyanese doctors, and amongst doctors generally, the preference is to do the more spectacular things. If you're not a brain surgeon, you're a bone surgeon or some other sub-skill. Very small proportion of doctors who specialize in mental health or psychiatry, and this is also part of the problem. So when we come to look at the problem of suicide, we can't really give you a clear reason, and especially a clear reason why the suicide rates in regions 1, 2, and region 6, Berbice, has escalated to the levels that they have. We don't know. And we have sought to, and we've been approached by a couple of universities and the UNDP to undertake studies that will help us to grasp this phenomenon. As I say, it's not the phenomenon that you want to understand, but why the sudden rise, why it has risen to such an acute level. There are other explanations which also have to do with the problem of stress arising from economic circumstances, economic difficulties, dependence, and the like. And therefore, if you're going to solve the problem, you have, in a sense, to address all of these things at the same time. That is the problem. It's not a simple resolution, but I really appreciate the fact that as a young lady, you would take an interest in this. It's not a glamorous area, and whilst I know that recently the royalty, I don't suppose the president engaged in any discussion on that front whilst he was in the palace, but it is also important to see that that in the UK, high-profile persons, or some of them, have at least acknowledged that this is an issue. It is an issue, not a sign that something undesirable. It befalls people of undesirable character or something like this, but it is a phenomenon that we have to deal with just like autism and anything else, and try and apply the techniques that are available, put resources to deal with it. Thank you very much for raising
it. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Mr. Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen all. My name is Desmond Beresford, Guyanese born, but as you can hear from the tone of my tongue, I've been here a long time. The question is this. We are introducing an electronic platform which will make the gold industry, bring it into the 21st century, make it compliant and transparent. As I said, we've been negotiating a long time. The one question we want to ask now is, coming back to Guyana and investing and bringing the people we're bringing, one of the little frustration we have is the time factors it takes to get to a situation where you may have a memorandum of understanding, etc. Now that the bill has been passed and SARA has its platform to investigate the wrongdoings that's been going on, we are ready, willing and able to come in and implement. What I'm asking is, will this now be the trigger to escalate negotiations, not just for us, but for any other investors that are coming down now this platform is in place?
Good evening, Your Excellency, Vice President, Mr. High Commissioner. Quick question. My name is Colin Bascom. I'm a chartered accountant. I'm also part of the same project team that's been in negotiation with the government. Now, to foster a better investment climate, you obviously have to tackle corruption. And you inherited a corrupt, criminal, some may say, architecture and in some cases infrastructure. And I'm very pleased to see the SARA bill has been passed. However, and I will keep this apolitical, there is a certain group of people who are presenting a narrative that everything you're doing is somehow discriminatory in a racial context. Now, my question for you is this. Do you believe that you are effectively communicating your message? There's a saying that perception is 9/10 of reality. And given the monopoly that a certain group enjoys in the media in Guyana, do you think that you are pushing back against that racist narrative effectively? Thank you.
My name is Anne Brackett, and I met President Granger. I met you way back in the 70s when you were editing Guyana Review. And I was visiting Guyana, hearing in terms of your legacy and how you see what's going on. It seems to be a lot of contradictions happening, following on from what the gentleman said just now. Judging by the audience here, you talked about having the seven-party coalition and the number of other racial groups represented in the government. The PPP can say the same thing, and until we look towards having real change for social cohesion rather than cosmetic change, it can undermine that hope, and opportunities are being lost as we speak in terms of making real and fundamental changes. The SARA bill is passed, for example, But the administration seems to want to have a cutoff point at what the PPP was doing. Yes, it was a terrible, corrupt government, and they're responsible for a lot of African Guyanese deaths that have not been investigated. However, when the foundation for what the PPP were able to do was set by corruption within the PNC, how can it be taken seriously when we don't talk about the iniquitous constitution that where the votes were rigged for that constitution to be passed? How can we talk about how can we talk about cohesion when we don't talk about all the elections were rigged? We can't just stop at the PPP and expect to win over a large proportion of Guyanese people who want to see change for the better in Ghana, but who are dismayed when it looks like the same script, different actors. The last point I want to make is about this. The last point I want to make is about the resources of Ghana. One of the resources which is being hemorrhaged from Ghana continuously is the human resource. You know, hundreds of nurses and teachers get trained each year. Every year, the ones who are trained, people who are getting trained and qualifying at the university and so on, are still leaving. Even people here whose children and grandchildren might be considering returning to Ghana, they're making sure the green card is secured. I'm hoping that you will still see that there's an opportunity to make some real change in terms of social cohesion and eliminating corruption. Thanks.
Thank you very much for those 3 questions and comments. I will ask the Vice President again to deal with the question of the negotiation with the administration and the establishment of MOUs. We are, of course, interested in foreign direct investment. We have established a Ministry of Business, which is meant to expedite these investments and ensure that they are done more quickly. If there are delays with MOUs, we want to identify the bottlenecks. Obviously, people have choices. If they do not receive satisfactory answers in a short enough time, they would go to other destinations. So it can't be in our interest to delay requests for information or applications for investment, but I'll ask the Vice President to deal with that. As far as corruption is concerned, yes, there have been some people in the system who have been embedded there for a long time. But let me say this, one of the reasons that we've come up here is because I said in my remarks, we needed to re-establish the Security Sector Reform Action Plan. It was thrown out of the window, and I believe progress in turning back the tide of corruption was halted. And a lot of illegalities occurred during that period. Now, I cannot enumerate all of the sources. Guyana has a 1,300 kilometer border with Brazil. And Brazil is the 5th largest manufacturer of small arms. A lot of guns come in the country. Last August, we discovered an airplane very poorly camouflaged under some tarpaulin in a village called Upokari in the Rupununi. And it was empty by the time we got there, but it must have been bringing in some white powdery substance, we don't know. How can it happen? It means that some villagers had to know, because wood had to be cut to conceal it. Some people must have heard the plane land and not take off again. So when we speak of corruption, we also speak about the security of our borders. We speak about the integrity of our law enforcement forces and police forces. And we're not just speaking about punishment, we speak about assets so that we can patrol those borders effectively. And if you're talking about 1,300 kilometers of frontier with Brazil alone, we just don't have the people to do that. We have to have electronic surveillance, we have to have aircraft, we have to have all-terrain vehicles. We have a 450 kilometer long coastline, we have to have a maritime craft. And one of the reasons for being here is for us to get assistance to conduct better surveillance. Because some of those crimes themselves promote corruption. Because you find rich drug lords can buy off law enforcement officers or buy off members of the courts. So I'm not accusing the courts of being dishonest, but what I'm saying is that in almost every country that there has been drug trafficking, there have been government officials who've turned a blind eye. And we need to ensure that the law enforcement agencies are strengthened. And as I said, we have already met Baroness Anley, we've met Secretary for Commonwealth, Foreign and Commonwealth Relations, and we already have a Security Sector Reform Action Program in operation. So we are not unaware of the danger of corruption, and that has created a rot in some sections of the service. So we have to ensure that our law enforcement agencies are retrained and re-equipped in order to detect that form of corruption. So the architecture is being dismantled, but who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men. And it is not something that we could claim victory after 2 years, but we're working on it. The opposition communications, well, nowadays, right now somebody is recording this, you know. Somebody is recording everything I say. And communications are transmitted at the speed of light. And people go for the sound bites, people go for the images, and sometimes the person who gets the message out first is the person who's believed. Not necessarily because he or she is truthful, but because he or she gets it out there fast. Yes, we have to work on it. I was just at the mission, and we promised to provide more written material for those who read. But for the younger generation, unless we put it on the screen, I'm not criticizing any young people here, but we have to develop other means for delivering that message. And we have to embrace information technology much more than we've done, without buying a coconut tree in Caravan. Now, again, I'm not running away from the third question. There has been change, and there is hope. We are not creating any artificial cutoff point, but at some stage we have to stop the blame game. Because every time somebody makes an accusation, somebody could tell you something that preceded that. And we go back, you know, from 1992 to 1962 to 1952. So where does it end? I'm not saying that we should, you know, forgive our enemies or turn the other cheek. But what we are doing now is looking forward. We have a forward-looking program. You're quite right. You referred twice in on your remarks to the need for social cohesion. And I think this is the right direction. I don't think the situation has ever gotten so far as, you know, you need a sort of committee, you know, truth commission, as happened in South Africa or elsewhere. But there are too many unexplained deaths. How do you explain the fact that a minister sitting down next to you in the cabinet could be assassinated, and you don't even conduct a commission of inquiry, you don't conduct an inquest? You know, what's going on? The Americans refuse to give us certain types of assistance to, you know, come to drug war, because they say, look, the drug lords are walking along Georgetown. And he never got arrested until he went out of the country into a more lawful jurisdiction. So let us not go there. Let us look forward and use social cohesion as a device for bringing people close together. the brain drain continues. And, you know, the Prime Minister of Barbados told me some time ago that four Guyanese presidents out of 9 are descended from Barbadians. So the brain drains in Barbados started 100 years ago, or longer. Barbados actually commemorates the number of its citizens who died building the Panama Canal. There's a movie called The Diggers, but the Caribbean has always been exporting people. And when you speak of the brain drain, I'm sure Guyanese are not unique in this jurisdiction. So Jamaica has been exporting people, Barbados, Antigua, St. Kitts and Nevis. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but people make choices. And we would like our citizens to stay at home. We would like to make Guyana more safe and a more happy place for all. And in that regard, I'm sure more people will want to stay. But migration is not something to prevent. We are not going to secede from CARICOM because Bajans come or Haitians come or Jamaicans come into our country. We believe in free movement and we do everything to facilitate. Every week, over 800 Cubans come to Guyana. You know, we don't close the doors to migration like other countries, like other jurisdictions. So migration is a universal phenomenon. It is not something that was recently invented.
Mr. President, can I just add to the question of migration that migration seems to be a feature of small states. If you look at the statistics across the world, it is the case that islands in particular, small countries in general, suffer from extremely high levels of migration. And the statistics show that, for example, you mentioned in the region, close to Guyana's rate of migration is that of Jamaica, for example, Barbados. So I don't think that we ought to be arguing in here over whether Guyana is peculiar in its levels of migration. To the extent that economic activities and opportunities can be created, then I think you will find that those rates can be brought down. But let me just add, by way of these first questions that were asked about the challenge posed by dealing with presumably the Ministry of Natural Resources in the gold sector and your ability to get early answers. That sector, like any others, suffers from skill shortages, and in addition, compared with many others, of course, gold, you just have to mention gold and you have an excess attraction of demand. So you have thousands of applications. Today alone, there were a number of representatives of very large firms asking what opportunities there are. So you need to appreciate that there is pressure on the ministry to process, and whilst I'm sure that that can be enhanced by more efficiency on their part, maybe we need to try to give them more time, and of course they need to recruit more skills. I think it's not a lack of intent, but that I think is a reality that they face there. I think as regards the question, I'm not going to venture too far because I think the President answered the third question. I would simply like to say that it's clear that a person has resided here and in the United States. You are aware, therefore, that in all jurisdictions which claim to be lawful, there is something called the statute of limitations. You can't just decide to prosecute a crime which was committed 900 years ago. There are limits. SARA, therefore, has those limits. And if it is the case, of course, that there's a specific person that needs to be investigated, then that, I think, should be made evident. But the point I want to make is that you need perhaps to visit Guyana, because in the debate surrounding the elections of 2015 and 2012, you will notice that inequality and corruption featured in the hustings to a greater extent than it's ever featured in the past. We had debate about corruption in the election, for example, of 64, 66. That period, you had, but the extent to which income inequality has grown. you perhaps need to go to Ghana to see. The residence of someone who goes into government, they never owned a house, they never owned a car, they leave government with one of the biggest residences in the country, they leave government owning radio stations, radio licenses, etc. We need to have some balance in how we assess what is going on. You don't just assume that because you may not like the complexion of a government, whatever they're doing cannot have been different from what was going on before. The populace recognizes that there's a difference. And the instances of someone standing in the road, known to the public, inciting people to go and vote because that is your right, and that person is murdered. Murder, these are not things that a government has made up. These are things that are there and they cause the populace to react to them. That is really what is going on. So one needs perhaps not to sit and make oneself too much of a judge at a distance. You need to go and see what is happening. The birth of inequality in Ghana today is that it's never been in the past, certainly in the post-independence era. And that is the issue that lies behind a lot of these things, and why you can't just simply draw parallels and say, well, the other lot must have done the same thing. So bear that in mind, please. Thank you.
This is not so much a question,
forgive me,
but a plea and an idea.
Yes, no question, Your Excellency. Just a privilege to be here. And an appeal to my fellow Guyanese that we invest in Guyana and make Guyana great again. Land of our birth, where all our neighbors spring buried. As an act of loyalty, I now present this. It's small. Other people may be able to do much more, but a token of my loyalty to the High Commission, a laptop that is internet ready, and I hope it is of much service to
Thank you very much. We can take 2 more questions, then we'll have some refreshments.
Your Excellency, I think you made an excellent case on behalf of Guyana's...
I can't tell who's speaking, can you?
Oh yes, sorry, John Agard.
John Agard.
One of those poets that... and I hope because I'm a poet, you wouldn't think I'm merely fantasizing. And if you do think that, I'm happy. I began by saying it is not a question but a plea. You made an excellent case, Your Excellency, on behalf of the natural beauty of Guyana, which is unquestionable. But following up on what Ian Hall said, entrepreneurs in this audience may feel motivated from the things you have said and the developments in progress. But an artist in this room may be looking for something a little extra that motivates them to return to Guyana. I can assure you that when many tourists come to England, they don't come to take note of England's green policy or their carbon footprint. The Japanese head towards the countryside of Beatrice Potter, the house of William Wordsworth, the house of Shakespeare. When we as artists head to New Amsterdam and we ask this question, can I see Edgar Metalolza's house, one of our pioneering writers? I don't know the state of that house, but I can assure you that when a creative artist visits Guyana, they're not impressed by the biggest patois or the biggest Canaima or you name it. So what I want to suggest in a very simple way, Guyana has done a great thing in maintaining the Guyana Prize. I wonder if we can go a step further. And no doubt you have the clout, if you may pardon a rhyme as a poet. Your Excellency, no doubt you have the clout. I am visualizing, and if you can fantasize with me, a house like Martin Carter's house. If that can be transformed into a creative arts club, along the line of the Chelsea Arts. And I've already got a name. We can call it GADAC, Guyana Arts, Diaspora Arts. In this room, you've got Grace Nichols, twice winner of the Guyana Award. You've got Keith Waite, composer, Ian Hall, Compton, an architect, Aubrey Bryan, not only a steel pan player, but a maker of pans. And when we as creative artists of the diaspora go to Georgetown, what do you say? Where can you hang out for a drink? The inevitable, predictable answer, we can check out Carol Lodge, check out Pegasus. Can you imagine, Mr. President, if we establish GADAC, Guyana Arts, Diaspora Arts, for journalists, sculptors, photographers, architects. So when you go back to Guyana, you need to be a member of the club to control. You don't want another rum shop, but you can bring a guest. But taking the model of the Chelsea Arts Club, this could be a first, and this would be somewhere where creative artists, you can hang the works of young photographers, hang the works of painters, creative minds can get together. Because despite the manatee, despite the big Canaima, ask ourselves this question: what can Guyana contribute to the global mind space? When you speak of Russia, you don't speak of a dome they built. You speak of the Dostoevskys. You speak of the Tolstoys. When you go to Spain, you don't want to simply see a building. You think of, this was Cervantes' house. Like I said, this was where Shakespeare lived. There lived Beatrice Potter. Sadly, the politicians, a few weeks ago, Walcott died, a sad man inside, realizing the politicians do not take the arts seriously enough, and taking it seriously enough implies creating a building, an infrastructure where creative Guyanese minds can go and engage globally. So I think I've heard a lot about entrepreneurial incentives, and I've heard little about the creative artists. That's our legacy to the global mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Your Excellency. My name is Roslyn Shepherd, and I just want to ask what we do for tourism, because when many of us travel, we get hassled in different countries, and now, having been in the industry for over 25 years, I'm having to route people via Paris, via Amsterdam, and all over, just to keep the cost down, because we pay an arm and a leg to get to Guyana, our hometown, and it shouldn't be that way. What plans have you got in place to help us to get home as we ought to, please? That's the question.
Good evening, Your Excellency. It's been such a pleasure to be in your presence, and I just want to thank you for this opportunity, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Sharon Fortune, and I am one of the executive members for AGNAP, Nurses Guyana's charity for Guyanese nurses. And I am currently a lead practitioner in psychosis and psychotic team, and I'm mental health trained. I was trained in Guyana previously, and then I came here and retrained. Now, some of the questions that has been asked with regards to suicidal rates, domestic violence, mental health issues, I mean, I really want to say to us that it's happening all over the world, fair enough. But what I do think we need to do, as moving forward, is I think we need to interject now in terms of our curriculum for our first hands-on nurses to have part of that training so that they can be able to detect, because one of the reasons why we are actually seeing the cruelty and the outcome of the nature of some of our suicidals and domestic violence, and I presume there's a lot of drugs that can be precipitated part of it, the turbulence that you said in terms of the time, but unless we put a platform where we can address the issues, we would never know. So we really have to ensure now that we have frontline trained nurses that have mental health as part of the curriculum, because now that I'm on both sides of the fence, now that I've been trained in mental health, I can see things totally differently. I saw there was an article in terms of somebody who had in terms of somebody wanting to commit suicide, that the police can be a point of contact. It's not going to be a very good idea because of the stigmatization from society, the whole compact that comes with it. If I want to kill myself, I think the last person I would want to tell is the police. So I don't see, it's not going to make any, and now that we are encouraging Guyanese to come home, including myself, I just want to assure that I'm safe. And equally, my brothers and sisters, we are safe. My mom, I can share with you now, my mom has got late stage dementia. I took her home to Guyana and I had to bring her back because it's not even heard of. Things like postnatal depression, not even heard of. Drug-induced psychosis, not even heard of. So there are things that is actually amongst us, and unless we see the outcome, whereas people's arms have been chopped off, people's head have been chopped off. Where are the valuables, loving, law-abiding Guyanese that I know? I think we've moved into a kind of a gruesome generation, and I can't relate to that. So I just want us to think about how can we, in terms of setting a platform, that nurses now, training and coming up, can be able to have that skills and that expertise, even if it's the basic, that somebody who is suicidal, you can detect it and have an arena where they can come and sit and speak with you, that we don't have to see the outcome. Because now we have to race with the rest of the world. We are going for that race. So we have to take everything in our stride. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you for that batch of 3 questions or statements. First of all, John Agard, well, no one could disagree with you. We are very proud of our artists. Every name you mentioned, to use Ms. Trotsman's words, make your skin grow. I wouldn't speak of getting goose flesh. But you're quite right. We recognize and we honor them. As you know, many of the houses, Martin Carter's house is a heritage site. And we certainly have a collection, the works of Savory Williams, who spent a lot of time here. In fact, only a few days ago, people were trying to save one of his paintings from the Philistines. But yes, it is extremely expensive to maintain wooden buildings in a tropical, rainy country like Guyana. The rehabilitation work of St. George's and the City Hall will run into billions of dollars. And these sites you've mentioned have been designated, but designated as heritage sites, but you're not going to get flocks of people going to them. We need to solicit the support of non-governmental organizations, and you yourself, as a published poet, could, if you have an NGO, if you have a group of people in Georgetown, or a team of people here in the diaspora who want to go to Guyana from time to time to hold seminars or exhibitions, we'd be very happy to sponsor that. And I would like to get your ideas so that we can discuss this with the Minister of Education. We have museums, we have galleries, but quite frankly, sometimes you must accept that people are living in 2017. And many young people, they want to see something on Facebook. They want to see something that moves. They don't want to go into a museum anymore. It's not attractive for them. So some of your recollections may be very picturesque, but a lot of young people, I believe, want to see moving images, rather than buildings and coffee nights, readings from Martin Carter and all that. So you must accept that things are changing, and your vision may not be the vision of the majority of young people now. But it's a good idea. Let us get your ideas, please, and we can see what could be implemented. But more could be done to publicize the works by producing a tree. So there's not a mad rush out there to go into these heritage buildings and to have long nights discussing the works of these icons. But I like your rhyme, doubt about the clout. We have the clout, and we don't doubt that with your energy and your ideas, we'll be able to move this forward. But I warn you, somebody referred, I was a publisher of a magazine, and I warn you, people want to see moving images. But let us think of an NGO. Don't believe that government is the last resort or the only resort for all of these cultural developments. Ecotourism, yes. As you know, the Ogle, the aerodrome at Ogle has been upgraded. It's now international. It's called the Eugene Correa International Airport. So people can fly in there directly from Barbados. If you go down to Barbados with your Virgin or your British Airways, you could hop across 2 hours from Bridgetown to Eugene Correa, and you could be in Georgetown, for lunch. So much has been done. The Chedijagan Airport has been extended, and at the beginning of next year, I expect we'll be taking wide-body jets. It was based on an old World War II airport, and the possibilities for extension were limited, but it is now actively being extended, and I am confident that early next year it will be operable. So you can bring in your tourists to those destinations. Getting there is important. Foreign Minister and I were earlier this year at the opening of the Argyle International Airport in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and it's a big carnival. Because to get to St. Vincent prior to Argyle was very, very difficult. You had to go to one of the bigger airstrips and bigger airports and then hop across, shuttle across. And many tourists are not interested in that. They want to go from Gatwick to the destination, and when they finish, come back home. So transportation, particularly air transportation, is important. Our Aerocram International Center, the aerodrome there is being developed, and it will become a port of entry. So people will be able to fly from Barbados straight into Aerocram, have their experience, their environmental experience, and fly straight back out without passing through Eugene Correa or Chedijagan. Mental health, well, we spoke about this before. I agree with you, more needs to be done. But Guyana is not a basket case. Some of these crimes and disorders are not as pervasive in per capita terms. There are other countries like Trinidad and Jamaica which have very high rates of homicide, but don't feel that your country is on the brink of collapse. Sometimes the headlines, I myself have to correct the headlines, because people go for sensationalism. But I don't deny that more has to be done. We're not a failed state. Please bear in mind the element of causation. Guyana has become a major platform for narcotics trafficking. And that is one of the reasons why we had to seek assistance to curb, because narco-trafficking alone has the capability of pushing so much dirty money into the law enforcement agencies, into the regulatory bodies, that you can see what happens to other jurisdictions in Colombia, Mexico, and elsewhere. So we are aware of the danger, but we haven't failed. We are curbing this, because once you have that level of narco-trafficking, you are going to have a lot of young people becoming addicted to the drugs. And sometimes you see somebody rapes a 77-year-old grandmother, Not out of love, it's the money that she has on their mattress to go and buy more drugs. So once the drug culture gets into our villages, and this has no race, It's not African problem or Indian problem or American problem. This has become a national issue that if we don't keep drugs away from our young people, we're going to get some of these problems. And some of them might be, I don't know, you're the psychologists and you know the psychoses, but some of them might be attributable to drug abuse. I don't know if the Minister of Foreign Affairs would like to add anything.